What's up, nerds? Havoc. And hey, got different kind of video for you. This is a look at Dawn of War Definitive Edition. And I'll say to you guys, like, so I played about 100 games now, and I never really, like, I played this game a little bit when I was a kid. I played skirmish games, but played none of the expansions. So virtually have like no Dawn of War specific experience coming into and I've been streaming a fair bit, which has been very helpful because I've been learning a lot from players that have been dropping in and sharing tips and stuff. And so I kind of wanted to just throw together a video for you guys today on some of the essential things that I've learned. First, like 100 games I'd say I've played now with Space Marines, and what I'm doing is I'm trying to learn the fundamentals of the game. I picked Space Marines because I'm most familiar with their roster from other games like Space Marine.
Area secured.
Played Eternal Crusade, which is like another third-person shooter, very similar to Space Marine. So just familiarity with like their general roster. And I decided I wanted to start with them and just play a lot of games and really feel like I mastered them before expanding out to the other factions because there are so many. There's 9 factions. So I thought like what I would do is kind of talk about like how some of the things that I've learned from playing Company of Heroes have transitioned into this game, and some of the differences and like some of the things that really stuck out to me that I think make the biggest difference for somebody coming from Company of Heroes into this game. So starting out, just to briefly explain for anybody who hasn't played this before, basically the way the economy works is you have 2 resources, requisition and power. Think of it as manpower and fuel. The requisition is much more reminiscent of the Company Heroes 1 system, where you need to accumulate territory and then upgrade the territory points with these listening posts in order to extract more requisition from them. And think of it as manpower. Like you're paying manpower for essentially all of your units, and this includes like reinforcements of units, which can happen on the field. And power is generated via plasma generators that you can construct in your base. You spend requisition plasma generators. You can actually build them anywhere near one of your list posts, and you can also build them on top of slag deposits, which are actually not on this map, but they're usually little like pink icons on the map, and you could build a special plasma generator on a couple. I think it's called like a plasma. Anyway, that's the basics. So getting into the gameplay, this very much like Company of Heroes, it's like straight into the action. You're very early on jockeying for territory, jockeying for position. There is cover, light cover and heavy cover in this game. You'll notice like when I mouse over the cover positions, it will tell you what the differences are between and being in. And there's also negative cover, which is usually in the form of like shallow water typically. But I wanted to highlight for one thing at the beginning. So unfortunately, because of the spectator mode in this game, I can't showcase like what the unit card actually looks like. But you can basically set stances for all of your units, and by default, they take an aggressive stance. And somebody like the Force Commander, you can see there's a mix between here's his melee damage range, his range damage range. But one of the important things that's very different coming into this game from Company of Heroes is that units fire on the move a lot in this game, but they have very little accuracy. Like very little. Like you have a less, I don't know, maybe if I had to guess, I'd say it's like a 20% chance of hitting your target while you're firing on the move, which means most of the time you want to be standing still when you're using a ranged unit. So what this means is that you essentially want to set all of your range units. So by default, that's going to be like your tactical Space Marine squad, your scouts, and in some instances, a unit with a mixed damage composition like a Force Commander on a hold position mode. By default, your units will automatically run into battle and kind of like try to walk into an effective range. And what actually happens is you lose a lot of DPS doing this, because instead of just firing from the maximum possible range, it will walk the whole squad in to make sure that basically like every model can fire. And you actually end up losing a lot of DPS because your units are actually walking too far forward before taking their shots. This also is going to affect like how quickly your units will respond to commands issued to attack certain units. Sometimes they will stagger, sometimes they'll take like a few steps, and that will cause them to miss out on valuable damage, which is really going to add up over the something else that I'm learning about is like the snowballing effect of well, basically the whole game is like one giant snowball. Because your economy system is persistently producing. It doesn't matter whether you're fielding more units or not. There's no upkeep system in this game. So as you build, you know, larger numbers of units over the course of the game, your army just gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and it leaves very few windows for your opponent to try to come back into the game. So what that translates into is like when you have the initiative, when you have the advantage, you want to keep the pressure on your opponent. Because that is going to be the most effective way to end the game early and not give them a chance to get back in the game. Because, you know, if your opponent, if they turtle really well, they defend really well, they build up a bunch of plasma generators in their base, they might still be able to out-tech you even if you have good map control. And there's also some like nuance on what factions map control for. Like Necrons, for example, don't care that much about map control, but I digress. So I wanted to focus on a couple things. First one was the stances. That's really super important. So by default, your units will take an aggressive stance when coming out of your chapel barracks, or I think pretty much any building, regardless of what faction you're playing. And I would say for your range units, guys, you probably want to set them on the default of stand ground. You can see here, we're also taking advantage of the light cover systems. Factions have different, you know, levels of mobility in this game. You can see here I'm playing a mirror matchup against another Space Marine player, so I'm kind of just like jockeying for position, trying to harass his resources, and this is really what it comes down to. So I got a great tip in my chat early on, which was basically like listing posts. They cost about 100 to put up, and then it's 100 plus 75 power to upgrade. And once they are upgraded with a turret like this, they become quite durable and they deal a good amount of damage. And it's almost never worthwhile to trade with these towers in the early game because you bleed so much requisition, and it gives your opponent an opportunity to start to build a snowballing advantage in terms of the number of units. And then you just put yourself in a very difficult position. So if you're going for early game harassment, that can be in the form of you're decapturing points that are there's unconstructed listing posts on. So if this would be the best example. Like if you have, you know, your opponent has a territory point, but they have yet to put this isn't a good example because it's a critical location. You can't put listing posts there. But if this was a standard like requisition point or territory point, what would you call it? Strategic point, I should say. If there's no listing post on, getting the decapture is much quicker than trying to capture a point. So decapturing is going to harass your opponent's economy and force them to spend more time capturing up the map while you're taking the time to consolidate units, build upgrades, start scaling out your economy, etc. And then these listing posts, like the unupgraded ones, there's no turret on them. You can see this one, this actually has a turret in progress. It looks like he started to build it when he saw me coming, so he could try to defend it. I'm getting a good deal of chip damage in, and I can see here that I kind of outnumber him in terms of like the number of troops. So I'm going to stick around in this engagement for a little bit, but then you can see I start to backpedal here, and then as soon as you can see, very similar to Company of Heroes, there's like a visual indicator for when your units are in cover. So I'm taking advantage of the cover here where my units are going to take less damage. And this is going to allow me to start trading favorably in this engagement. You'll also notice that I'm using, unlike this guy's attached his Force Commander to his Space Marine squad right away. I've opted to separate my Force Commander so that he can tie up squads in melee. This is a term that's used in Dawn of War to basically express when you're removing an opposing unit's ability to deal damage to you with their ranged weapons by engaging them in melee combat. So what's going to happen is as the Force Commander is fighting this squad, They will not be able to engage me with their bolters. They have to engage him with the knife because he's attacking them in melee. So it's a unique mechanic to this franchise, which I actually really like. It's a very interesting mechanic. Dawn of War 3 as well, which I played quite a bit of. And so it's a great way and a great form of like skill expression to tie up your opponent's most lethal ranged units with melee ones so that you can, you know, get the advantage in a... You can see, I noticed that his turret's gone up. I'm going to back up here. I'm very comfortable fighting him from light cover. You can see my force commander also standing in light cover. And I'm just very comfortable like holding this position, keeping his space marines from coming into range, coming into the cover position, I should say. I'm reinforcing my squads on the field. And this brings me to another mechanic that is super useful. I don't know if this is exclusive to Definitive Edition or it's available in every mode, but this automatic reinforce, what this is basically rather than clicking the reinforce button, what you can do is you can queue up multiple squad members, but that's going to take away from your requisition resource that you have in the pool. By right-clicking on this button instead, it's only going to consume the requisition for a reinforcement that you can actually produce. So basically, there's going to be no backlog of requisition, and you're going to max out your efficiency on your requisition spent, because if there's a backlog that's going into, you know, units that are waiting to be reinforced, that may mean that I'm missing out on the opportunity to build an additional generator, to upgrade a territory point, etc. So when you're reinforcing your squads, this is generally the better way to do it. Just right-clicking this button and then un-right-clicking it basically when you want to stop reinforcing, which you might want to do, you know, trying to keep your units relatively small, but you want to have more of them. Which is something I might talk about. And so you can see in this situation, you know, I'm only taking favorable engagements, trying to snowball the game in my favor. I've dealt some good chip damage to his listening post. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start poking around. I'm going to keep checking if he's there. And if he is, then I'm going to look for another opportunity damage. All the while, I'm building for myself a slight... I don't actually know if we're at a... No, we're actually... He's got a better economy than we do at the moment. But I do have my third TAC Marine squad out, and I believe my opponent only has one or two. You can see he's in the process of building an armory. And this is like... This is a perfect example of how much of a snowball effect different investments in the game can have. So, like, I've got 3 TAC Marine squads on the field. He has 2. He's got 1 force commander. But he's building an armory and he's also got an additional generator. That's actually going to mean that like he's in a tougher spot in this engagement. And so what he should probably be doing is playing more defensively, seeing that I have invested more resources in more units in the early game. He's going to want to play much more defensively, maybe under his turret, so that he's not going to be in a situation where like I'm going to overwhelm him with numbers. He's going to get completely pushed off the field, and then I'm basically going to snowball him into his base, even though he's got a better economy. But we'll just kind of see how this plays out. So we take the engagement, fighting from range. I'm trying to stay outside of the listening post range, just continuously dealing chip damage to him. I was going to identify whether or not he had a listening post on the relic point. Looks like he does. I'm going to be backing away from that then. See him in the process of teching up here too. Not the best micro on my part. He's actually doing a very good job of focusing down my squads. But we've got a good economy, so we're able to come replenish those space marines that we're losing. And in the meantime, you can see we're starting to put up our armory. And this is kind of what I was talking about. You can start to spread your buildings out. You don't have to keep them in your base, but it is helpful to put your generators and other fragile buildings under the protection of a listening post that's upgraded. Because they'll be able to deter your opponent from just like chipping away at them for free. They'll actually have to pay for it. Accidentally walked my scouts into my opponent. Gonna lose those really quickly, but I realize that's created a bit of an opening. Space Marines. See that he's coming back. It looks like he's gonna engage me here in the yellow light cover again. Got our armory up. I'm in the process. So this is something I learned very early on. The upgrades, the squad upgrades, relatively inexpensive. The armory upgrades, I should say, relatively inexpensive, massive impact in like the effectiveness of you. Like, I mean, can we see the difference? Okay, we will. We will see the difference in the health after
Position
we pick.
secure.
I actually don't even know how much it is together. Okay. So what I've done here is I've gone for heavy bolters. They're going to allow me to fire at his listening post from outside of the range. They're also going to make really effective weapons against his Space Marines. If he tries to push in, I'm going to be able to chip range. And these weapons have really high DPS. You can see here on the right-hand side where it says 106 to 120. That is the DPS of the heavy bolter unit, of the heavy bolter, whereas you can see the standard bolter, 28 to 34. So massive spike in damage, and this is kind of what I was talking about. Like the unit upgrades make such a difference in this game, compared to something like Company of Heroes, where it's like, you know, it's an upgrade, but it's not like insane. It's not like 4 or 5x the damage like it is in this one. Okay, so now we've got. You can see here our Space Marine health looks like it went up by about like 10%, which is going to make a big difference when you're factoring in how beefy the Space Marine squads are in general. There's also upgrades in the armory for, you can see here I'm getting target finders, which is going to increase the DPS of all of my attack Marines. And I've done a good job of investing in a way that is putting this guy in a bit of a weird position. He's decided to dump more resources into plasma generators. I'm investing resources into weaponry, which is going to allow me to take up some of the space on the map, and I'm actually starting to overcome him in terms of the now because taking this point away from him. And we're going to start to stage. You can see here I'm kind of just staging the push on the next listening post. Going to sit very comfortably outside the range. That's going to continuously force him away. And all the upgrades are super useful, guys. Like I talked about, like, you know, so I'm focusing on Space Marines right now so I can get the hang of, like, you know, how this faction plays, the tech tree, the matchups, etc. There's so much to learn. Normally, you know, I encourage people when they're playing Company of Heroes to just like stick with one faction for a little bit so you get comfortable with the base mechanics. But then, you know, once you're comfortable, then start to diversify and play other matchups and understand weaknesses of each faction, etc. There we go. We're tearing down some of his listing posts. I'm decapturing the territory. I'm going to put up my own listing posts as well. I'm building more plasma generators. This is something that, like, it took me way too long to figure this out. It's actually super embarrassing. So listing posts, when you build them, they cost you 100 requisition resource, but when they're finished, you get back 50. I learned that like super late. I know this is like a really basic thing for people that are listening. They're like, oh my God, he's such a noob. I know. It took me like 25 games probably to figure that first part out. And the same is true of power generators. So if you need a quick hit of power to your economy, building another power generator will actually throw another 50 power into your, I guess, pool or your resource cache or stash, whatever you want to call it. It'll give you another 50 power, and then it will continuously generate on top of that. So I'm seeing here, you know, I've got my machine cult up. I'm thinking about how I'm going to get my first vehicle out. And I know, you know, plus 30, it's going to take me a while to get to my vehicle. So I'm just going to throw up another power gen, and that's going to give me a nice kick and bonus that I need to give me better timing on whatever vehicle I choose to bring out here. So we can see my opponent, he's upgrading with sergeants. He's getting some plasma guns, which are very effective against heavy infantry. The devs, I have to say, they did like such an exceptional job explaining all of the tooltips are very good in this game. You just have to take the time to actually read like what the weapons do, what they're effective against, the range, etc. But it's not intuitive because, you know, it's not like World War II. It's not like, you know, super recognizable units. Like it's sci-fi. It can be very confusing. So it can be a little bit jarring, but I've been spending some time on like the Dawn of War wiki. That's a great place to learn more about units, your own units, as well as your opponent's units. all of the different factions that you're going to play with and against is a great place to go. Anyway, moving on. So we're going to keep creeping up here with the heavy bolters. You can see I've gone for a couple heavy bolters on all of my Marine squads. Just continuing to chip away here at his listening post. He recognizes he can't challenge me because he knows that if he walks in here, he's just going to eat heavy bolter fire and he's going to lose a lot of squad members. So he's just kind of letting this happen while he's going for, looks like he's going to build some Grey Knights with Furious Charge, which is a really nice upgrade for them. He's going to get himself a nice front line. Meanwhile, my chaplain is coming out. He's already got his chaplain out. Librarian. This build, I'm learning this build is called the Three Kings because you have the Force Commander, which is the first special unit for Space Marines, the Chaplain, which comes from the Stronghold, second special unit, and the Librarian is the third. They call this build the Three Kings, where you attach each one to attack Marine squad and then kind of use that as like your core roster and then stack, specialists or, Grey Knights or vehicles on top of that, etc. So this guy, going for a little bit of a different approach. I'm going for the Dreadnought. I have a terrible habit, guys. If you can save yourselves from this habit. Oh, I did it this time. In this game, you need to increase your population by spending resources and researching capacity from your base, your stronghold specifically. And I find myself very frequently pop capping myself on vehicles specifically because you start with 2 vehicle pop cap, and a Dreadnought is 3, and that's like one of my favorite vehicles to start with. And I'm finding that I have the resources to build the Dreadnought, but I forget to research the population capacity, and it delays my Dreadnought timing a lot. So if you can remember, upgrade your capacity for vehicles before building your Dreadnought, that would be very helpful for you. All right, so I'm pretty confident that I've got the light cover position. It looks like he's just going to walk into me. I also have grenades, which you can't see from the interface here, but I've researched grenades from the Chapel Barracks. The grenades are a fantastic way to disrupt an opponent's push onto your Space Marine squads. You can see I'm also in the process of researching sergeants for everybody. But he does a quick AoE, I don't know what this is, storm ability, I think, from, maybe it's the smite from the Librarian. And then the Grey Knights charge on top of it. Oh my god, look at that grenade, it was so good. But then he just zaps my squads. Look at them, they're all dying. Everybody's dying. And you guys, I mean, anyone who doesn't play this game knows, that's a crazy, So now I'm on the back foot. Thankfully, our economy is very good. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plasma generators going here. I've got a Dreadnought here on the field. Unfortunately, lost my scout, but my Space Marines just got nuked, so I need to back away and buy some time. Dreadnought's going to help us do that. He's just going to create some space here, keep my opponent away from my listening posts, away from my power generators. Meanwhile, I'm trying to replenish my forces as quickly as I possibly can. And I'm also, I think I end up going for another Dreadnought here pretty soon. I'm going to talk about the vehicles in a little bit in a second here, because I feel like distinguishing between the vehicles, especially for Space Marines, is pretty important. So Dreadnought, you can see here I'm eating missile launchers. So you have 2 variants of Dreadnought that you could build as Space Marines. One is melee focus. You can see that was the one I built here that just fell apart. The second one is a Hellfire Dreadnought. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I've probably got the most conflicting information from chat on which Dreadnought to go for and when as I've been playing my games. It's been really confusing for me, but I have to say, the more I play, the more I prefer the Hellfire Dreadnought. It's the cheaper version. It doesn't come with melee capabilities. It's strictly ranged. The reason why I like it is because I find that my opponents, a lot of the time, they have compositions that look like this, where they're blobbing, and they blobbing, but it's the name of the game. Blobbing several range units together. And the Hellfire Dreadnought and disruption in general is so powerful in this game compared. like just raw DPS. Like DPS is good, but disruption is so valuable because it shuts down your opponent's squad from dealing damage to you for an extended period, which gives you plenty of openings and creates a lot of space for your units to come in and deal a lot of like counter. And the Hellfire Dreadnought comes with a missile launcher attached to it that just knocks Space Marines around, and you'll see when it comes out. This Dreadnought, pretty low impact, you know, like my opponent, he kind of backed away, he upgraded a bunch of missile launchers on his Space Marines, and then I was cooked, right? It was pretty much done. Here, I'm just going to play defensively. I'm going to let him have this listing post, probably the plasma generator as well. He's actually spread his units out quite a bit here. I've got a 4th attack Marine squad as well. I'm kind of just holding him inside the light cover. But recognizing he's starting to focus on me, I'm going to back away. There we go. Here comes my Hellfire Dread.
2 minutes.
And what I'm going to focus on here is staying in cover, keeping him at range using the heavy bolters, and trying to kite these Grey Knights. Because these guys are the really scary guys. You can see the ability getting used on me again, just melting away at my guys slowly. Just backing away out of the area of effect, taking a lot of damage though. Grey Knights taking a lot of damage. And this is where, see, this is where the Hellfire Dread is really powerful. These missiles, you can see it's just knocking his guys around, disrupting his backline, shutting down his ability to retreat with the Grey Knights, and I actually managed to kill them because he was overextended. And now he's got these big clumps of infantry that are just going to start getting knocked around by the Hellfire Dread. You can see this, and this is going to create lots of space for me to continue pushing in with my heavy bolters in the back line, and basically pick off the models as they get knocked around. You'll see it as we kind of continue to push in here. 4th attack Marine squad still going. You can see I've also right-clicked my heavy bolter upgrade because I want to continuously upgrade these guys. I'm expecting infantry. It's always a good idea. This is a Space Marine specific tip. Generally, if you're thinking about like an anti-tank squad, like missile launchers or stuff like that, generally it's much better to keep your weapon types, I guess effective ranges together as much as possible. So what I mean is, like, if I was going to do a mixed composition, I wouldn't do like heavy bolters and plasma guns, because heavy bolters are good at really far range, and plasma guns are good at medium range. And so what's going to happen is if I attack move my Space Marine into a squad of infantry, they're going to set up at the heavy bolter range, and only those 2 guys are going to fire, and I'm going to get no value out of my plasma guns. In the same way, if I want to engage an opponent at mid-range, maybe they've got a lot of heavy, slow-moving infantry, like Necrons, for example, I love loading up my Space Marines with plasma guns. Because it allows them to stay mobile, and they deal really great damage to pretty much every Necron unit because they're all heavy infantry. Whereas the heavy bolters, I mean, the heavy bolters are good too, but they're a little bit more susceptible to getting interrupted by blade ones or whatever they're called. They're like a melee unit that the Necrons can deploy kind of like in your back line. Anyway, so you can see here we're continuing to apply the pressure. The key takeaway there was basically, you know, I think like upgrading your Space Marines with a uniform weapon type is an effective way to go. Or if you're going to do mixed, like do 2 high range weapons, like maybe 2 heavy bolters, 2 missile launchers, or 1 of each if you haven't gone for the 2nd weapon upgrade from your armory. Those are generally both like the best. You can see here, taking a little bit of missile damage, but like, you know, I'm able to back up here safely. Unlike my other Dreadnought that had to push all the way in, I'm not as susceptible to getting picked off here by missile launchers. And now I'm going to take advantage of this cover position again. I'm going to start chipping away at his listing post. Grey Knights are coming back in. Hellfire Dread sitting in the back line. Honestly, I think I kind of We got 4 Space Marine squads here going loaded up on the heavy bolters. Gonna walk in again. I'm taking a lot of damage. Oh my god, look at that ability. Oh my god. Oh my god, he's just nuking all my guys. It's crazy. But the Chaplain making a huge difference here. Chaplain is probably one of the most valuable units for Space Marines because it heals all of your guys in an aura continuously. See here, he's engaging. And this is where like the company heroes micro comes, right? I can see that he's focusing his squads on this unit. So I'm focusing on reinforcing them. I'm getting them all into the light cover position so they take less damage. And meanwhile, I'm pulling up my other troops to hit him back, you know, return fire. And frankly, the Hellfire Dread should be or micro on my part. Then recognizing, you know, I've hit kind of critical mass. Like he's only got 2 squads of Space Marines. I've got 4. Dread's still just standing around. Recapturing this. Should have stopped that sooner. Go. Yeah, and you'll notice like the fighting in combat here, wiping squads. So economically, guys, like reinforcing your squads doesn't really make a difference compared to building fresh units. In fact, building fresh units are actually a little bit cheaper overall. Because like fresh Space Marine squad is 4, I think it's 4 men for 190 requisition, and models are 50 requisition each. So if you build 4 into an existing squad, it's actually 200, so it's a bit more. So building like fresh squads a little bit cheaper, and it's actually much nicer if your opponent is going a very melee heavy composition. Building more squads is better because we talked about like the melee tying up mechanic earlier. Your TAC Marines are primarily ranged. They do their best damage at range. And so you want to use the ability to kite your opponent's melee units while the range units are shooting at them. So you can see here his Grey Knights are engaged with my Tactical Marines. The right thing for me to do in this situation would probably be to drag my TAC Marines that he's trying to melee away, because he's going to deal less damage to me that way than if I just stand there and fight him. And all the while, all of my other range units can continue to harass the Grey Knights and shoot at them while they're chasing my other squad. So that's another like really nice little like micro mechanic that you can take advantage of. And you can see the guy, he just gets recognized he's not going to be able to push through. We killed his Grey Knights again. Hellfire Dread came back in. So basically, guys, the core things I wanted to talk about were the economy system, the way that I'm thinking about the engagements. So I think like a couple of the things, really nailing down like using control groups in the early game. You know, I figured out like a consistent number that I'm putting my units on. I'm putting my Force Commander on 1. TAC Marines I'm typically putting on 2 and 3. First vehicle I like to put on 6 because I kind of carried that over from Company of Heroes. Makes these units a lot easier to select and micro. It's very difficult to like, I'm finding like tab and like cycle through units and move them around individually if they're not individually control groups. So that's a nice like tip that will help you select your more important units. And then yeah, like I think especially when you're playing Space Marines, like one of the things I've been missing out on is the mobility aspect with like the rhinos. I mean, that's probably a top thing, but I just wanted to kind of, you know, share with you guys. I've been playing this game. I'm about 100 games in. I feel like I'm playing at like close to kind of an intermediate level at this point. I'm definitely getting knowledge checked a lot still, where I just like don't know what to do or don't know what has happened. But I will say, like, guys, that the systems in the game are very intuitive. The descriptions are excellent. The wiki is very good for bridging the knowledge gaps that you might have. And I mean, like any game, the best way to learn it is kind of to just jump in and start experimenting and watching. I've been watching other creators on YouTube that are sharing like casts of videos of higher level players, etc. But it's a lot, and it's deep. It's like there's a lot here, and there's people that have been playing Soulstorm for 20 odd years. So it's been a lot to absorb, but anyways, I hope you guys got a little bit from this video. I know it was a lot of me kind of just yapping, but I wanted to kind of share, you know, this is something that I've been playing. I'm enjoying it. I'm really looking forward to Dawn of War 4. I'm going to be covering that a lot in detail. But you know, if you guys would like to see something specific when it comes to Dawn of War content, like I would love to hear what that is. And so I can focus on it. But in the meantime, I'm going to be continuing to play Space Marines, continuing to get better. And then as I feel like, you know, I've really grasped like all of the matchups and everything, I'll probably start diversifying and playing the other factions as. So anyway, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you nerds on the next one.